Welcome to Innovator Insights, where we explore the minds shaping the future of tomorrow's leaders. In this episode, Scott sits down with David Peterson, whose journey from serving in the Air Force to inventing multi-seat thin client solutions now finds him leading education sales at Kensington. David shows how listening to real needs drives practical innovation. Let's dive in.
Tell me what comes to mind for you when you think about the word innovator.
Innovator. Well, if there's anybody that innovates, I think they're ones that are bucking the system, if you will. You know, you're looking ahead, you're trying to figure out which way the road's going to turn. And there, in many ways, that's really hard to do. You know, I've been doing it a long time, but there's innovators like Elon Musk. There's innovators like Madame Curie. There's just a lot of people that I've always looked up to as I've been growing up. I grew up on a farm out in Iowa, and every farmer that I knew was an innovator. Baling wire, bubble gum, and balsa wood
Necessity.
solved a lot of problems. Yeah, so that's kind of what I think of as an innovator.
Well, that's great. So my guest today is Dave Peterson. He is an innovator, and he's currently with Kensington. Thank you for joining me today, Dave. Where are you joining us from?
I live in upstate New York. I tell a lot of people I live on American Airlines, but right now I'm at my home in a small town called Cazenovia, New York, near Syracuse.
Okay, so you started to touch a little bit on your background there. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your career?
Yeah. So I grew up on a farm out in Iowa, taking care of cows and pigs and chickens and whatnot. And there was 29 kids in my high school class. So
Wow.
yeah, not a lot of competition out there, but a bunch of great folks and folks. They just get her done. That's the motto: get her done. Nobody complains. Well, they do, but they say just got to get her done. So I ended up in the Air Force,
Oh, okay.
doing things in the Strategic Air Command, from F-111s to the National Emergency Airborne Command Post. Saw a lot of really cool technical stuff back in the 70s and 80s. And, it's just amazing what we have today in our hands. The stuff that we saw when we were doing our job kind of pales in comparison. So I did that. And after I got out of the military, I went to work for what was one of the 5 largest computer companies, Control Data Corporation, and spent my year there working on making better media. We had a problem with our magnetic tapes not holding their magnetism, and so I spent a year helping to fix that problem. Ultimately, I learned, instead of trying to hide a problem, this is where I think a lot of innovators come in. Instead of trying to hide the problem from the U.S. Patent Office or IRS or whoever bought a ton of these things, we would ask, tell me about the problem and how you would fix it, and we ultimately solved the problem. Unfortunately, Controlled Data went from 50,000 employees to 0 in the space of a weekend, and it was just that
Really?
time when they went from mainframes to, they were going to PCs, and an innovator, Bill Gates, was figuring out how to innovate and go from full-blown gigantic supercomputers to PCs. And so when I lost that job, I ended up working for a company that sold stuff to schools. And I spent a lot of time with them, 6 years, learning the ropes. Ultimately, I worked through that and several other companies, forming my own company, inventing things. I have a number of patents on thin clients and that sort of thing. So it all came from listening to people and using, as you say, some innovative skills.
But is there something special about your background that you look back on that sort of prepared you to take on these innovative roles?
I tell people I'm just a farmer from Iowa.
Is have to do it, sort of necessity.
Yeah, out of necessity. And, growing up with people that say, quit complaining. If somebody can do it, you can do it. I remember my grandfather telling me that if someone can do it, you can do it. So figure it out. And working with school districts over the years, I've talked to a lot of people, including yourself, that
Hmm.
were very interested and passionate about their problems, knew a lot more about what side of that, where those problems were. I use the example of, I actually jumped up on the fence, jumped out into into that cornfield with you and saw your problems from your viewpoint. Once I did that, and I could actually understand maybe what the solutions would be.
Yeah. I mean, I preach this, and you hear if you went back and listen to other episodes, I say it on pretty much every episode in some shape or form. You know, a product is only good if it is a solution, if it solves a problem. It doesn't matter about the bells and whistles, but as you're
Mhm.
saying, you were listening to your customer and you were making sure that whatever it was that you were presenting actually solved a problem or met a need, and that's very important, I think,
Yeah. And
personally.
Kensington's always been good at listening to, their manufacturers aren't good, and there's a reason for this. They aren't good at listening to what their sales reps say, because their sales reps are only listening to that one guy or that one person who's got a problem. And they'd say, if you only blah, blah, blah did this, we'd sell 1 million of them. Well, one thing I learned was that if I can get as much information from as many people as I can, I would sit down with consortiums in school districts, the BOCES in New York, the ESCs in Texas, and I'd get 30 people. And if I heard the same line of reasoning, the same complaint line from 20 of those 30 people, I knew there was a solution waiting to, a problem waiting to be solved.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, keeping with that thought of innovation, it can of course be a buzzword, but in the context of your work, what does it really mean? I mean, is it about radical new products, or is it more about finding smarter ways to do things?
One thing I'd say is it's not getting there 90% of the way. Okay. You can't, there's so many 90% products, I call them, for K-12, for SLED, for the companies that I talk to.
Mhm.
There are so many 90% products out there. And the folks that I deal with, they don't want a 90% product. Everything is a 90% product. They need something that, that fully meets those needs and is really 100% product. And so, as you move through that, listening to those people and actually hearing what the real complaint is. It may not be they need a, a faster, bigger, better. They just may need a zipper that's on the left side instead of the right side. And so, it's really hard to come up with the solution that is going to be that's going to work when you're at that beginning edge of the slope. You got to come up with that product. And, even if it's not right, even if it's only 50%, when you give it to put it in your hands
Mhm.
and you can break it and tell us how to make it better, by the time, if we start early on that, then we're going to end up with a product when everyone else around you wants that product, but they know us, the company that's
Right.
making it. Yeah. So
Okay. Now, for you personally, what would you say your biggest innovation is, or that you were involved with?
before Kensington, the reason I went to work for them was because my boss wanted to get involved with what was a multi-head thin client, and something that I invented that I had patents on. And I never worked for the company, so I won't mention it, but I did sell off. Um, I did sell off patents to them, and they took the product. It turned one PC into four PCs, and they literally sold tens of millions of those all over the United States and overseas. So that's probably my coolest thing that I've ever been involved with. It has become a big ubiquitous. Some of the componentry in it, some of the hardware virtualization has become ubiquitous in an Intel and AMD and other chips. So that's everywhere I look. There's something that I had a hand in anyway.
That's got to be pretty cool, right? Kind of
Yeah.
rewarding when you take a look around and go, I had a part in that,
Yeah.
whether it be direct or indirect or, somewhere down the line. But that's very cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, every journey, every innovation journey, there's bumps in the road. Anything in particular that pops to mind when we're talking about major challenges that you faced and what you might have learned from having to work around those challenges?
Yeah, but you said it was rewarding. It wasn't financially rewarding. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah. You end up with you know, you have to stick with it sometimes. Sometimes it's a matter when you're working for a company of putting the zipper in the right spot on a backpack. Sometimes, you put a VGA port on a docking station because schools are old and they still have VGA,
Yeah,
and so that could be financially rewarding because nobody else has an damn old VGA port on a docking station, so we sell a ton of them. Uh, but that didn't change the world. The stuff that I was most proud of, I think, really changed the world. And if I had unlimited resources to be able to keep walking the plank until somebody, send down the rescue ladder, then it would have been financially rewarding. But that was the toughest part. I have to
right.
deal with whether it's a boss or whether you have to deal with a wife or whatever bank account. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's been the toughest part. Yeah.
reality for sure. So, taking a look back at your career, are there any, I don't know, let's call them aha moments or unexpected inspirations that led to a significant innovation that you were part of?
Yeah, I'd have to say I'm thinking about that because there's lots of little aha moments. Um, when I when I quit being a sales rep, that's how I lived for my
Right.
whole life, in essence, as a sales rep. But when I quit being a sales rep and started being a relationship with customers, when I worked for a company who was willing to do that, and Kensington is at that point, I realized that it's time for me. I use that example again. I use the example of I've got a fence. It's not just a fence; it's a 10-foot high wall, and I can't see through it. But I hear the customer telling me what the problem is. But I hear faster, bigger, better. That's not really what the problem is. But when I can figure out how to crawl up over that fence and walk around through using my farming background, the cow patties, if I can walk around through there and I can actually see what their pain points are, then I can, this little tweak will solve a problem to them that doesn't cost them money. It just makes them crazy and it's easy for us to fix the problem. So let's do that. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest aha moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important, to have that direct feedback or to have, as you mentioned, a relationship with your customers. Not just I sell X, Y, and Z, widgets, but for you to have a relationship where you were talking to people and getting that feedback and
Yeah.
having real conversations, and you were able to understand, as you mentioned, the pain points. I think that's critical in a company being successful and making sure that the products you're producing are what the
Yeah.
customer really
Mhm.
needs.
Don't you think that as a, as a buyer, that you're going to put people in silos also. As a buyer, you're going to put that rep from the bus company or from IBM or from Dell. You're going to put them in a silo, and you're going to treat them differently than somebody that you trust, like, trust, and remember. And so that aha moment was, I'd like to be that person they like, trust, and remember, not because I take them out to lunch or not because I'm the yes man, but because I really value your opinion. And so that's been a big aha for me. Think like
Yeah,
I want
that's a refreshing approach.
yeah.
So, all right.
So
Well, so now, since the tech landscape is constantly changing, how do you and the team you work with at Kensington, how do you stay ahead of that curve and maybe foster a culture where the new ideas they're not only welcome but they're actively sought out?
yeah, yeah. So that's a great a great question. I love that because you've heard of focus groups, Pepsi versus Coke, blind taste tests, and uh, that doesn't really foster a relationship though. So I spend a ton of time. I used to do, I got a team now, but we do about 100 focus groups a year across the country where we sit down with I alluded to this, 10, 15, 20 people at a consortium, a BOCES in New York. I mentioned IUs in Pennsylvania. And we sit down and we say, here's a bunch of stuff. Use it, break it, tell us how to make it better. And that really, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from folks that are scheduling these meetings where they say, "Yeah, we don't let sales reps come in here." And then once they hear what we do, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're not really a sales rep. You're like
Right.
one of us."
Right.
And so, are you serious? You're going to give us stuff and you don't want us to buy it? You want us to break it? You know? And so that's been the biggest help for fostering those relationships and keeping them going. I don't call anybody anymore to say, can I please come to your meeting and talk? They call me and say, when are you going to be back?
Yeah, that's a good place to be in.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we enjoy it.
So now let's talk about the process for bringing a new product to market. So where do I mean, you mentioned talking with your customers, obviously, but aside from that, or maybe in addition to that, um, where do the ideas come from? And then what is the process for determining whether or not an idea will actually be brought to market as a product?
Okay. So typically it comes about outside of our process. Typically you have these really smart people that sit up they're in the basement or on the top floor of a manufacturing facility, and they have 5 computer screens and they're looking at what's out there in the world. And the number crunchers are doing the same exact thing, and they're saying, the United States or the world bought 12 billion mice last year, or 755,000 buses last year. And they replace them at such and such a rate, and they cost such and such, and there's such and such amount of competition. And they look at what would the addressable market be? What's the total addressable market, and how much of that can we take? And then the number crunchers then go to the builders, the product folks, development folks, and say, can we make that? And how much will it cost? And so there's a lot of I'm telling you, a lot of financials that go into that. And then they'll make that product, and it'll take a year or 2 or 3 to make it. I don't know if you picked up the fact that a problem with that, because if it's going to take a year or 2 or 3 to make a product that's already kind of out there, by the time you make it, somebody else is already going to have that product, and you're behind the curve. So being able to have a conduit between the directors of technology, whether they're at Home Depot or at Sag Harbor, having that conduit in such a manner that these brainiacs that sit there with 5 computer screens in the form of product development can actually understand, is a really good way to get that going quickly. Get ahead of that curve that way. I can't tell you. And what's really helped our team is all my people are really good at the 3 Bs: bubblegum, balsa wood, and bubblegum baling wire. So because when we go in with 40 ideas and 30 of them are almost the same from the perspective of a customer, and we go into our product development folks, every time their answer is, that can't be done. That can't be done.
That just fuels you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So when we take our 3 Bs, our balsa wood and our baling wire and our bubble gum, and we come up with a lot of times I'm sitting down in the shop with the school district that I work with. I've been on the floor in the maintenance warehouse with the IT director saying, what can we do to make these wheels on the dang charging cabinet roll better over over
The various types
thresholds?
of floors. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we can go in after we've heard from our product development folks, this can't be done, and we actually did it, and they're like, They always, same thing. They say the same thing. They say, "Oh, I didn't know that's what you want. Of course that can be done." So,
That's interesting. It
yeah.
always takes that second look for them to realize that they should have listened to you the first time, right?
Yeah, I don't know about listening to us, but nowadays they're like, okay, I'm not going to tell you, it can't be done. Let's just cut straight to the next thing. Yeah, so it,
So with that lead time that's needed, that's got to present a lot of different challenges logistically, right? To get a product that somebody has thought about, whether it's you or somebody else on the team that's come to your attention. That's a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of money, right? So when things change in the marketplace, for example, recently tariffs and things like that,
yeah,
um, how do you adapt to that? How do you pivot to be able to work around the changes that you didn't anticipate in a planned project?
yeah. Well, over the years, things have changed from a lot of stuff getting built in the garage by Bill Gates and Mr. Packard and Mr. Hewlett. A lot of things have changed over the years, and our relationship with the Far East is uh, I consider to be very good because there are lots and lots of places in China and others now, but that are very good at understanding what the market needs, and they'll actually, I don't know how, it costs money to do it. They'll actually go out and make 10,000 of these things. They're they're almost there too. They're not 90%. They're like 95% or 98%. They're really closer than what what typically comes out of some of the places that the normal places in the past. And so we have the company I work for now. We have a good relationship over there. We actually have people that scour the countryside to find that better charging cabinet or that better mousetrap or that better bus traction system. Although we don't make bus traction system, I'm using that as an example. Um, and we can many times with the quantities that we need can say, okay, the zipper needs to be on the left side instead of the right side. We need another cup holder, that sort of thing. And we can really fast prototype much faster than we were when we were doing it on our own. We had to have all our own equipment, and it was very, very costly to do that. Nowadays, we can in essence outsource that. So
So in reality, we're talking about collaborating with some of these other companies, right? So tell me about collaboration, teamwork, and how that impacts innovation or bringing ideas to life in Kensington.
yes. Okay. So it's very important that we have factories, and we have factories that we own all over the world. We
Hmm.
make everything from swing line staplers to GBC binders, and we make a lot of that stuff ourselves. We own those factories, and Kensington does too. We own our factories that make many of our products, and and we're always on the look. What tends to end up happening is we'll find these um, these products that a fast prototyping company can make, and we will end up inserting our requirements into their facility. And although we may not own that facility, they don't make products for anybody else but us at some point. And so, just changing with the times is really important. And I never would have pictured that. I always pictured everybody having their own, you know, Albert Einstein idea guy that can, then
Or Dave.
yeah, exactly. But that times have changed. Yeah.
So is I'm trying to piece this together all the time, and I'm trying to come up with some common characteristics by asking all my guests the same similar question. Are there certain traits about people that you can identify that um, people that are innovators have that maybe some others don't? Are there's personality traits or characteristics or things like that you think are common in people like yourself and some others that you've met that are similar?
So if you're a scientist, you're trying to disprove what you think is right. You're not trying to find the path through that makes your hypothesis work. What you're trying to do and it is to hear people tell you what's wrong with your thought process. That's what scientists do. I consider myself to be a scientist and engineer. That's my background is engineering. And so rather than a sales rep who's always trying to get, I tell people the sales rep is saying, when a customer says, well, what about this problem with your product? And what does a sales rep do but go, look over there? It's,
It's
and
not a bug, it's an enhancement, right?
yeah, exactly. And so, but scientists are always looking they don't have that, not that they don't have pride. I don't mean to say that. It's that they don't want to be right when they're wrong. They want to be wrong when they're wrong so they can move on to the next thing to figure out what is right. That's Thomas Edison said, I haven't failed at making a light bulb. I've learned 1,000 ways that a light bulb won't work. And
Yeah.
with all the filaments that he put in. And so that being said, I think that is the bedrock of a good innovator is not being so proud of their ideas or their accomplishments that they stop with the good or the wrong and never get to the best or the right.
Very interesting. Okay, so now, is there any advice that you might have or give to someone who has this really great idea, but they may be hesitant or not clear about, how do they bring it forward in a large organization such as yours?
Figure out how to um, figure out how to get past that point of I've got the best idea there is. They really need, if someone thought of an idea, if I've thought of an idea, I know this from the patent process. If I thought of an idea, there's another 100 people out there, 1,000 people that have thought of it. Don't think that what you've got is the best thing there is, and utilize all of your relationships. Okay, that's where the relationships, that's where our focus groups that we use come in. Utilize your relationships to make it the best product, even if you didn't. I mean, the thing that we invented that turned one PC into four, it was going to be, in my opinion, the world changer. We were going to have, how you have those green boxes in the neighborhood that they run computer cables, into your house from.
Hmm.
That was going to have a server farm in it, and we were going to deliver the entire Windows desktop as a service. Well, I, because I was so stuck on doing that, which would have been like that would have been the $1 million idea, right? We were just so stuck on that idea that we didn't say, well, you know what? Why do we deliver the desktop? Why don't we deliver the apps? Where did Google go? That's what they're
Yeah.
doing, and they're doing it much cheaper than we ever would have done it. So you just gotta get out of your own way sometimes. It's really what it is.
Yeah, that's true. In in terms of future innovation, whether it be with Kensington or anything else, um, in the broader tech world, any trends that you're keeping a really close eye on?
In Kensington, I'm in this world of people working at desks, whether they're home or somewhere else, and that to me doesn't seem to be too innovative. I'm working very hard to keep the creative juices going in that respect. A lot of it has to do with comfort, and this may seem boring. The zipper on the right side, the correct side of a backpack seems boring, but it helps you sell a lot more backpacks. Right now, it has to do with comfort. We're both sitting at our home office,
Right.
and you know, uh, uh, things like ergonomic. You think about ergonomic mice and things like that. There's a lot of your body that can benefit from ergonomics. So we spend a lot of time asking people to stand in schools, stand on these pads. Tell me which one's most comfortable. I think that the everything wireless is going to be really important. Wireless screencasting, there's a lot of that out there. So everybody's late to the game that's coming up with the newest innovation for that. But still, there's better ways to do that. Um, uh, eye health. That's ergonomic also, but those are the sort of things. So
Gonna have to keep an eye on that and see if your predictions come true.
we'll see.
So for someone who might be listening who's interested in being more innovative in their own field, do you have like a single actionable step that they could take today so that they could start thinking differently?
In their field, that harkens back to the old farmer days, huh?
It might apply to that.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. I mean, you think about it. Um, my family doesn't drive a tractor anymore. They have tractors that run themselves, GPS. They know they don't spray fertilizer, a blanket spray fertilizer. They know from GPS and satellite data what part of the field is slightly lower than the other part, and they give it less fertilizer or more fertilizer, whatever it needs. So, you know, just don't. My advice would be don't use the phrase "that's how it's always been done."
Yeah.
We could have used that 50, 100 years ago. We could have used that 10 years ago, but the time frame of that's how it's always been done has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. I think that would be a number one. That helps you get out of your own way sometimes too.
Yeah. So what's next for you? Is there anything that you're working on, that your company's working on? I mean, obviously, if you can talk about it, if you can, I understand. But anything in particular that is on the horizon for you?
You know, with Kensington, as I say, we're always looking for new types of products that have to do with whether it's enterprise, Home Depot, Bank of America. We're always looking for things that will make it more comfortable for people who are sitting at desks, and especially when the company hasn't put 1,000 chairs in 1,000 offices. They're working at your house. I can't tell you how many people are sitting at their coffee table, hunched over from their couch, or they've set up a a desktop on their wash machine and dryer, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. So, as far as that's just going to continue, I think for the vocation that I have. I think for my avocation, I'm very interested in, and this is thanks to my son, urban infill, where there's just, uh, you know, people don't have to live so that they can't get somewhere without driving an expensive car. They could live in a city. You living on Long Island probably don't. I mean, I don't mean to speak for you, but there are people that that say urban infill. I don't like being a rat, and it's sitting in this traffic forever. But I firmly believe that there are ways that the government, along with business and people, can get together to make our lives more better, just so we don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a car all the time. We can use mass transportation. We can live in homes, and we don't have to have a postage sized backyard because we walk a block down the street and there's a beautiful park down there. So, and that there's a lot of technology involved with that. There's a lot of everything from magnetic levitation to electrical delivery ways, battery power. So, avocation has a lot of interest in that. Hopefully, I didn't get off the subject too much there.
No, 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 not at all. I think we've touched on this a little bit today here. Most people when they hear the term innovation, it's tech right away. It's always tech, but you mentioned, I mean, at the top here, innovation takes place in many forms, whether it be, out on the farm where I'm talking prior to tech. I mean, obviously, as you pointed out, now the tractor's running GPS and all that. So it's always interesting to me to get different perspectives on innovation in general, because I don't want it to always be about technology. I want it to be more conversation about creative approaches to problems. And the reason this is coming up is because of what you were just mentioning about, the cityscape and so forth. Um,
Yeah.
there's a part of that obviously that's very technical, but I think there's a part of it that is just understanding human nature
Yeah.
and trying to work with that and be creative, and I don't want to say buck the system because that's got a negative connotation, but sort of come at it with a different approach or different through a different lens, and try to come up with solutions to make everyone's everyday life a little bit easier.
Well, as Rodney, what was his name, said out in California 20 years
Yeah,
ago, why can't we just get along? I
yeah,
think that if our agenda isn't so inward focusing, and our agenda is for the better, and we're less politically crazy, then we can get a lot of stuff done. There's people that are different, and whether you're conservative or liberal, we can. Yeah, it could just have to do with people helping other people. We
yeah.
don't have to always sell something. We don't always have to make sure that people walk walk on that line the way that we walk on it.
Right. So now, just going back to the process of bringing products to life, so to speak, or ideas to life. I shouldn't say products. Let me start over. If someone did have an idea, and you use the example, I'll go back to product. You use the example of comfort in the workplace and so forth. Someone has this idea, and even though you said somebody else has probably already thought of it, right?
Yeah.
Um, what would be the tradition, the typical process that they might go through to try to get the attention of someone at Kensington or someone at any company that might be able to take that idea that they have and bring it forward?
Well, unfortunately, if it's a good enough idea and it's not protected with a patent, then a typical company that might have the deep enough pockets to take it to market can with the ability to fast prototype over in China could that product may already be there. They can either prototype it or order 10,000 of them on a sea container and bring them in and steal it from you. So
Yeah,
unfortunately, and that's one of the reasons that our government is fighting with China, is them stealing our ideas. Now they're much bigger ideas, really, chips and defense and communication and technology, but little teeny ideas, a hook on the end of a magnetic hook on the end of a tape measure, could be stolen without spending literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a patent on. So, so innovation is not bad. No, not bad at all. Don't not be innovative because you feel that you won't financially benefit from that. Your innovation should not be all based upon financial benchmarks. It should be based on what's if it's a good idea, if it's gonna solve a problem for the world as a whole. But people can't live on free. And so my suggestion is find a company that is interested in that and will be able to use the financial pockets they have to get the patents, to be able to protect themselves from that. But are interested in using you and your financial or your creative juices to come up with those ideas. And then build that on one step further is I don't know everything. I don't know anything really. I know people like, yeah, like IT directors at school districts who are passionate and have ideas. And if I talk to enough of them, I'll get three or four of them that have come up with the same idea independently. And at that point, then that's the time to start talking to product development and go from there. But the basis is your passion, your relationships are important, and then finding a company that'll pay the bills that will actually make that happen.
right. So in your role, you are sort of a de facto suggestion box, right, for the customer. They're going to go through you and say, hey, you mentioned the cart wheels don't work well, or be great if the opening for the cables to come out the cart was on the side instead of the back, because we tend to put them in a corner and we can't get to the backside or something like that. So it's things like that again, to me, that's those minor things are innovative to me, because they they have a really big impact, even though it might seem like a small little thing. Because if, again, I'll use carts, you're putting out, 100,000, you're making life easier for all of those people. 100,000 classrooms, 20 kids in a classroom. You're making you're having such an impact with that. So this idea that I think is what I'm trying to bring home is innovation doesn't have to be this massive idea or this
No.
incredibly large thought process. It could be something as simple as, you've given the example, putting the zipper on the appropriate place on the backpack makes everybody's life a little bit easier. So
Mhm.
I think too many times we think innovative, we are thinking Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all these big names, and in fact, it's Bob down the street who came up with this really brilliant idea that made everybody's life, so much easier. So
Yeah, 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 that's totally what it is. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, uh, I won't buy anything but Kensington. I don't even know if you have it, but I'm going to ask you if you have it because you're the only one that listens to me.
I
you
think I
know,
might have had that conversation with you a few times.
I think so. Yeah, and so that's a really easy way to to be innovative. That's a really easy way to make money. You can't be innovative and not make any money. You got to pay
Right.
the bills.
Of
Yeah.
course.
So yeah. It,
All right. Well, this has been great. I have a throwaway question here at the end that I always ask people just because of my own curiosity about the devices they're using. So on a day-to-day basis, what type of devices are you working on?
well, a company gives me a HP laptop, and I have a phone that my wife says I watch too many TikTok videos on. I swear to her it's just to get ideas, but sometimes I get stuck watching a full length movie later on Prime that I saw I saw that the advertisement for. I have an old Land Rover that I fixed up. I have an old car that I fixed up. Uh, I
So
do have a lot
you
more.
keep busy. You keep yourself busy with the
I do.
hands-on stuff.
I do with my hands-on stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
You just touched upon something though with watching the TikTok videos, and that's interesting. I don't watch TikTok. I don't have a TikTok account, but I hear a lot about the influence of TikTok. Um, has there been any instances for you personally where you've seen something that somebody has, brought to your attention on TikTok? Wait a minute, this could relate to whatever product I'm working with or project I'm working on, even if it's not the exact thing that you saw in that video. It triggered some thought process in you about how you might change something that you've been working on or add something new.
I was just thinking about that this morning. I got up early. I needed to move some dirt from one side of the yard to the other. And I realized that I had a rake that I got on TikTok that is not just a regular rake. It allows me to get dirt flat. It has slats in it and it's wide, and I can put a pile of dirt in. And instead of me trying to rake it in the right spot and make it level, this thing leveled it perfectly. And 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 I have probably 15 things in my workshop that I got. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought that I could put that on my drill and and on a piece of PVC make a thread. Oh my gosh, these are just ideas. And what makes them work is I don't have to go to Home Depot and look around and find the only the three top selling items that they have at Home Depot. This came to me from somebody somehow understanding that maybe that's what I want, and somebody made that. It hasn't. I haven't found anything that affected my what my job.
Okay.
There's been nothing there, but in my avocation, I'm like, if I would have known this 5 houses ago,
Would have made your life so much easier for sure.
exactly.
That's
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time today. It's great catching up with you. I'm happy you could join us today. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up again soon.
Scott, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap on this episode of Innovator Insights. A huge thanks to David Peterson for sharing his journey and insights on practical, customer-driven innovation. If you enjoyed today's conversation, you might want to head to innovatorinsights.io. From there, you can find more episodes and subscribe to our mailing list to stay updated on the latest in technology and innovation. And if you found this discussion valuable, please share it with a friend or colleague. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.